He stood behind me watching. I could feel his eyes on my back. Just seconds earlier, Darius had touched my hand, and I hadn't pulled away. And that's when my husband walked in. But instead of anger, he just smiled, like he'd been waiting for that moment all along. What he said next, it shattered everything I thought I knew. You won't believe what really happened after that. Welcome to Vows and Betrayals, where real emotions meet the messy truths we try to hide. Have you ever had a secret you couldn't tell? Not even to yourself? Drop a dot in the comments. You're not alone. Thank you for being here. It means more than you know. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the twists still to come. Now let's begin. Hey, I'm Lillian. I'm 58 years old, and most days I feel like a shadow in my own home. I used to be a nurse, 20 years of stitching wounds and holding hands through pain. But now, I spend my time folding laundry that no one thanks me for and cooking meals that go cold before anyone remembers to eat. Michael, my husband, retired last year. He taught high school history for over 3 decades. We used to laugh more, talk more, touch more. But somewhere between empty nests and quiet dinners, something froze between us, like the first frost that hit Virginia this Thanksgiving. We live out here, tucked between the woods and forgotten fields, the kind of place where silence stretches longer than roads. And this year, the snow came early, soft, quiet, almost polite. But under its stillness, something in me began to stir. Maybe it was the cold. Or maybe it was the message I saw in Darius's eyes when he stepped out of that truck. He hadn't visited us in years, not since his wife passed. And yet the moment I saw him, I knew something was different. Not in him, in me. Some truths come too late, but some arrived just in time to break what was already cracking. The morning of Thanksgiving, I was up before anyone else. That's how it usually is. I like the quiet, the stillness before voices fill the house and footsteps wear down the floor. I was looking for the good china buried somewhere in the storage room under blankets and years of, we'll get to it later. Michael never cared for the fancy plates, but I liked setting the table nice, even if no one noticed. That's when I found the box. It was tucked behind an old suitcase, just a plain cardboard thing with frayed corners and no label. I almost passed it over, but something about it called to me. Inside were greeting cards, birthdays, anniversaries, random notes we'd written each other when the kids were still small. But there in the middle, folded between a Mother's Day card and an old receipt, was an envelope. It wasn't addressed, no stamp, no date. Just my name, Lillian, in slanted handwriting I didn't recognize right away. I opened it, and there it was, a letter written by Darius years ago. The ink had faded a little, but not enough to hide what he felt. The words were careful, respectful, but intimate in a way that shook me. I know this may never reach you. I know there's no right way to say what shouldn't be said. But I can't go on pretending I never felt it. I've carried it in silence, and maybe that's where it should stay. But just in case someone else ever finds this, I need to say it. You were the light I never expected. My breath caught in my chest. The room felt smaller, colder, like the walls were suddenly listening. I folded it back carefully and slipped it between the pages of a cookbook no one ever touched. My hands were trembling. I told myself it was nothing, an old memory, a passing moment. But you and I both know that was a lie. The house filled slowly, laughter, footsteps, the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon pies. On the surface, it was all the same. Another Thanksgiving, another carefully arranged smile on my face. But beneath it, that letter pulsed like a heartbeat I couldn't ignore. Darius arrived just after noon. Same old pickup truck. Same calm walk. But when he stepped inside and looked at me, there was hesitation in his eyes. Or was it recognition? We hugged. Briefly. Nothing unusual. But when his hand touched my back, it lingered half a second too long. Or maybe I just imagined that. He brought a bottle of wine and some homemade bread. Michael laughed, said he'd probably forgotten how to cook since Elaine passed. Darius smiled, but there was sadness tucked in the corners of his mouth. Elaine. That name used to sound distant to me. But now for some reason, it felt heavier. Like it carried a chapter I wasn't meant to be part of. After dinner, everyone drifted football in the living room, kids screaming outside. I stayed behind in the kitchen, clearing plates no one offered to help with. That's when Darius appeared beside me. "You always did more than your share," he said, rinsing a dish, like he belonged there. I shrugged. Old habits. He paused. "You know, I still remember that day at the lake, when Adam fell off the dock. You jumped in so fast I thought your shoes would float." I laughed, but the memory hit me deep. Adam, barely 7, slipping on wet wood, the panic, the splash. But what I remembered most was Darius diving in right behind me, pulling my son to safety like it was nothing. He almost never mentioned it. None of us did. But it lived in me. "I remember," I said softly. He looked at me then, not as Michael's friend, but as someone who had shared something unspoken with me. Not passion. Not yet. But something real. "Your hair's gone silver," he said, suddenly smiling. "I like it." I looked away, unsure what to say. No one noticed my hair had changed. Not even Michael. We talked for a while, nothing scandalous, just small things. How his house felt empty. How silence grew louder at night. How grief doesn't just come after death, but sometimes during marriage too. And then he said it. "I wrote something once. For someone I cared about. Never meant to send it. Didn't even think she'd ever see it. But still, I had to write it. You ever feel like that?" My throat tightened. I could feel the weight of that folded paper upstairs burning through the pages of that forgotten cookbook. "I might," I whispered. He nodded like that was enough. It was later that evening. Most of the guests had gone home, the dishes stacked, the wine opened a second time. The fire crackled low, giving the living room that warm, sleepy glow that makes you drop your guard. Michael had retreated to his study grading old essays out of habit or pretending to. I stood in the hallway with a mug of tea, unsure if I was stalling or searching for something. And Darius, he was by the bookshelf, fingers brushing the spines of books he probably didn't care to read. "You okay?" he asked without turning. "I'm fine," I said. The kind of lie you tell when you don't want the truth to sound too loud. He turned then, and for the first time that day, his voice wasn't light. "You know, I've never told you this. Not in all these years." I blinked. Told me what? He stepped closer. "Years ago, maybe 7, maybe 8, I was in Atlanta for a conference. So was Michael." I nodded, confused. "And I saw him," he said, "with a woman, at a restaurant downtown, holding her hand, leaning in close, laughing like he didn't laugh at home anymore." My breath caught. I didn't say anything. I told myself it wasn't my place, that I shouldn't blow up a family over something I couldn't prove. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. My fingers tightened around the ceramic mug. "Why now?" "Because silence doesn't always protect people," he said. "Sometimes it just delays the damage." I stared at him, my heartbeat suddenly loud in my ears. "You think I didn't know?" I whispered. "You think I haven't felt the distance, the cold bed, the empty conversations?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The air between us shifted. Thick. Real. Why didn't you tell me back then? I asked softer now. He looked away. Because I cared too much, and not enough. That answer should have made me angry. But it didn't. It felt honest. I never said anything, he continued. But every time I saw you smile through the silence, I knew I should have. Maybe I just wanted to be the one who didn't hurt you. I stepped back, needing space, but not wanting it. My eyes burned. Not from betrayal, not exactly, but from the grief of realizing I'd stopped expecting anything more. Grief doesn't always come with funerals, I said half to myself. Sometimes it arrives slowly, when love dies too quietly to bury. He looked at me with something tender, something dangerously close to longing. You don't have to say anything, he said, but I wanted to. Later that night, the house had gone quiet. The kids were asleep in their rooms. The fire was dying, and even the wine had gone cold. I stepped out onto the back porch, for some air clutching my cardigan tight around me. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the moon was just a pale blur behind them. I didn't expect to see Michael already there. He was standing at the railing, his hands in his pockets staring into the trees, like they might answer something. He didn't look at me when he spoke. You know Darius is a good man. I froze. The air suddenly sharper than the wind. He's been through a lot, he added. I said nothing. I saw how you looked at him. Michael continued, finally turning his head toward me. It wasn't subtle. Hasn't been for a while. My mouth opened, then closed again. No lies came out. Not even excuses. I'm not mad, he said. If you're waiting for anger, or yelling, it's not coming. Why, I asked, my voice thinner than I expected. Michael sighed. Because this, whatever's happening, didn't start today. And it's not about Darius. It's about us. Or what we've let happen to us. I leaned against the post, afraid my legs might give out. I felt you slipping away for years, he said, more tired than bitter. But I didn't know how to pull you back. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. Silence fell between us. Not the cold kind. The kind that holds too many unsaid things. Then he added something that felt like a pin through my chest. And maybe I deserve this. I turned to him. What do you mean? He looked at me with the kind of sadness that comes from remembering too much. I made mistakes, Lillian. There were moments I should have chosen you, times I didn't. That trip to Atlanta? Yeah, you guessed right. But it wasn't love. It wasn't anything real. Just a mistake. And I thought if I never admitted it, it wouldn't count. He laughed, bitter and quiet. Funny how that works. I didn't speak. My breath caught somewhere between fury and grief. He took a step toward me, slow, uncertain. I never stopped loving you, he said. But I think I stopped showing it. And I don't know if that's forgivable. I wanted to answer. But there were too many answers in me. Too many versions of truth. So I looked at him. Really looked at the man I married. The man who had disappointed me. The man who still wore his wedding ring, even when it stopped meaning what it used to. I don't know what happens next, he said, but I'm not going to fight you. Not for Darius. Not for the past. Just don't lie to me. If you're going to leave, do it honestly. And with that, he turned, opened the door, and left me standing alone under a gray clouded sky that suddenly felt too small for the weight I carried. The next morning, the snow was falling again. Slow, quiet, indifferent. It blanketed the yard, the porch, the roof like the night before never happened. I stood at the window, with my coffee watching the flakes melt against the glass. Darius had already left. He'd slipped out before anyone woke up. No note, no goodbye. Just a folded blanket on the guest room bed and a faint scent of pine that still clung to the hallway. Michael sat at the kitchen table reading the paper, or pretending to. We didn't speak, not because we were angry, but because too many words were fighting to be said and none of them were simple. I went upstairs. I don't know why, habit maybe, or the ache to be alone in a room that didn't ask questions. The cookbook was still there, tucked away like a secret. I opened it slowly, and the letter fell into my lap like it had been waiting. I read it again. This time, I didn't rush through it. I let each word settle. I let the silence wrap around me, not like a threat, but like a balm. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a plea. It was a confession, yes, but also a letting go. You were the light I never expected. I never wanted to cross a line. But if someday this finds you, I want you to know you reminded me what it felt like to be alive, even if just in thought, even if just for a while. I stared at the last sentence, even if just for a while. So many things in life are just that, fleeting, quiet, almost. I found a pen in the drawer beside me, not shaking this time, not unsure. And I wrote 3 words at the bottom of his letter. Next time, send it. Downstairs, Michael was still quiet. I passed him by without speaking, poured myself another cup of coffee. And for the first time in years, he looked up and said, "Want me to toast you a bagel?" It was so small, but something in it felt like a crack of light under a long closed door. I nodded, and we didn't say much after that, but we sat together, not healed, not fixed, but aware. I used to think betrayal was loud, explosive, a slammed door, a suitcase packed in silence, tears on the floor. But now I know some betrayals don't scream. They whisper. They come in the form of things left unsaid, moments we swallow, choices we avoid, and sometimes in a letter never sent. I don't know if I'll ever see Darius again. I don't know if Michael and I will ever find what we lost, or if we'll both keep pretending it was never gone to begin with. But I do know this. There's a kind of grief that comes not from losing someone, but from realizing they were never really yours to begin with. And yet, there's a strange comfort in the wreckage, in the quiet truth that we are all human, flawed, searching for connection in the dark. So if you're listening and you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever carried feelings you weren't supposed to have, or stayed quiet when your soul begged you to speak, please hear this. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are simply alive. And that is something worth honoring. If this story stirred something inside you, let us know in the comments. Leave a single dot if you've ever felt torn between duty and desire. Thank you for spending this time with me. And if you believe in the power of real stories, ones that hurt, heal, and humanize, subscribe to Vows and Betrayals so you won't miss what comes next. Let's keep telling the truth, one story at a time.